This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 29th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. Some very important vehicles are being introduced at the New York Auto Show, which is going on right now, and we'll have all the highlights for you coming up. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at drivingtoday.com/auto insurance. That's drivingtoday.com/auto-insurance. Love that hyphen in there. Well, Chris, New York was the site of the introduction of the production version of the Kia EV9, the Korean brand's all-new electric three-row SUV. We'll have details on that coming up. Ram also had a major introduction in New York. It introduced the all-new 2025 Ram 1500 REM, an all-electric vehicle. We'll talk about that. And Jeep pulled the wraps off a heavily revised 2024 Wrangler. So we'll be talking about that and other things from the New York Auto Show. I know you have been busily writing about this stuff, Chris. I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague. Chris lives at one end of the country. I live at the other. Each week we get together to talk about cars, the auto industry, and how you can get the most from your automotive dollar. Geez, that's a tough task these days. How are things in Maine this week, Chris?
Well, I'm looking forward to Jeep Wrangler weather here myself, Jack. The top down, can't wait for it. Just a few more days and we're supposed to reach 80 degrees, so that'll be a great birthday present for me, as my birthday's in a few weeks. So can't wait for that. How are things for you?
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to see 80 degrees here in Southern California. I'll tell you that. It's been chilly. I don't know that we're going to break 60 today. It's sunny, but windy and kind of, for Southern Californians, cold. I'm a native Chicagoan, so I'm used to the cold, but there's much gnashing of teeth over that. This, of course, is not a weather show. It's a vehicle show, and you have a really cool vehicle to talk about. Tell us what that is.
I spent the week driving the 2023 Toyota RAV4 Adventure. It's very exciting for me because I've owned two RAV4s in the past, so I can't wait to tell you about it.
Yeah. Well, and my daughter owns a previous generation RAV4 too. I think RAV4s are everywhere, right? They're ubiquitous.
They are.
I am also driving a Toyota vehicle and had the chance to drive the Toyota Prius Prime, the 2023 Prius Prime. It was just introduced, just put in the press's hands. I was one of the first to drive it, and I'll tell you what I discovered on that lengthy drive. In pouring rain, much of it, inexplicably here in Southern California. We have a terrific guest for you this week. Jay Joseph is the Vice President of Sustainability and Business Development at American Honda. He oversees the company's renewable energy resource circulation and new business development in the United States, and we'll be talking with him about their hydrogen power efforts globally and here in the United States, both static and, of course, in vehicles. Pretty fascinating stuff. They're coming at this in a different way than a lot of car companies are, so we'll talk about that. But let's dive into this new stuff that's being shown in New York. I had to turn down an invitation from Kia to attend the unveiling of their EV9 SUV. But it's a really important vehicle for them. It's a big part of their Plan S strategy. This is a three-row SUV, so it's a larger SUV that is all electric. I mean, that alone is newsworthy, isn't it, Chris?
It is, and they nailed the styling on this, Jack. I can't tell you how attractive I think this thing looks from a futuristic standpoint, from just every standpoint.
We've seen this as a concept vehicle before. In fact, we've had I think the designer on the show talking about it, but now they productionized it, and I'll tell you, they haven't lost very much of that, concept car thing in this production version. I think it's a very, very cool looking vehicle, isn't it?
I think it is, and they've done a really good job with the interior too. I mean, some of these concepts look really out there. They've brought enough of those elements to the production version that it still looks concepty, but it does also look very, very usable too.
Right. They're boasting a lot of range for this thing and quick charging, and that's becoming, I think, more newsworthy. It has 800-volt electrical architecture that enables ultra-fast recharging if you can find an ultra-fast recharging place that is working. That's good. It uses high-speed DC chargers. It can go from 10 to 80% charged in under 25 minutes, so that's pretty good. Maybe several cups of coffee and a donut. I was kind of interested in looking at the press materials on this. They kind of buried the lead in terms of powertrain. I mean, the powertrain was very, very deep in this whole thing, but I think the powertrain is interesting. Two powertrain options, a 76.1 kilowatt hour battery with a 215 horsepower motor that drives the rear wheels, or you could get a larger battery with a single motor configuration that has 300 miles of all electric range. I think that 3 number is a big one there. Or you could get a dual motor version with 379 horsepower, all-wheel drive. That has tons of torque, is expected to be quite fast, and it will probably have less range, right?
Yeah, that's typically the trade-off, right? You know, Kia did this with the EV6 too. The more powerful iterations lose a little bit of range, but you get the driving experience, I guess, on the other side.
Yeah, I'm curious about a 3-row SUV with only 215 horsepower. That's not a ton of horsepower for something that not only is hauling around a lot of people, because that's at least a 6 or 7 passenger vehicle, but also a big battery pack that is pretty heavy. This vehicle will arrive in the 4th quarter of this year. It will be assembled in the United States eventually. I think responding to the recent legislation that prompts that. This is a much bigger vehicle than most of the electrics we've seen, and that has its own, I guess, advantages, doesn't it?
It does. You know, we've seen a lot of the smaller crossovers and hatchbacks, and I guess the largest might be the GMC Hummer EV, but that's in a total different weight class. But this is, you know, kind of the middle of the road sweet spot for, I think, a lot of American buyers. So it'll be exciting to see how many pick it up, you know, and depending where the price ends up landing for sure.
Yeah, you talked a bit about the interior, but it will also have a full display mirror that will replace the traditional rear view mirror. How do you feel about these electric televised mirrors?
I think it's an adjustment period, right? You know, for you and I, we jump into a car for 7 days, we jump back out, and things feel a little weird when you're doing that. But I don't know. I guess if you owned it, you get used to it for a while.
Yeah.
After a while.
I have a tendency to turn them off, just use the regular rear view mirror, because it's a perspective I understand, and you know, you can't teach the old dog new tricks. Well, it'll be interesting to see this launched. It'll launch in the 3rd quarter. I will be fascinated to see what it's priced at and how they deal with the $7,500 tax credit initially and going on. But let's skip on to the 2024 Jeep Wrangler, which is a heavily revised Wrangler. I know you've done some writing about that. Maybe you can walk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So the exterior, you know, you're looking at this SUV now, it's immediately recognizable as a Wrangler, but Jeep did update the grille. So the front end looks fresher than it did before. They said they left the grille open so it can tow better. It gets better cooling and things through the grates there. It still has 4 powertrains, Jack. You know, you could still get it with the plug-in hybrid and with the V8 that they offered before. I haven't had a chance to drive the Rubicon 392. Have you?
I have not, I'm kind of curious to drive that because, you know, all that power and torque with a conventional engine should be interesting. I've driven most of the other variations of it, including the 4xe, which I think is a terrific vehicle and one of the most popular plug-in hybrids on the market right now.
Yeah, I agree. So you can get those 2 powertrains. You can also get a turbocharged 4-cylinder, and it still comes standard with the V6 that it's had for years now. I think the big story here, and we can talk more about this in depth, is the interior improvements that they made, because they really focused on the comfort of the interior. So there's more acoustic glass and there are more speakers inside so that when you're taking calls, you can do so at a higher speed and not get all the wind noise and people can actually understand what you're saying. And the thing that really impressed me here was that the new 12.3 inch, it's a standard display for all Jeeps, all touchscreen Wranglers. I'm sorry, that was bad. Standard for all Jeep Wranglers. It's a touchscreen now. And it's got some really neat trail mapping features, Jack, and it runs Uconnect 5. So I think that's a huge improvement over the previous setup. What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And it's nice that Jeep has some competition for the Wrangler and the Ford Bronco. I think it's peering over the Ford Bronco sales, and Jeep execs are looking at that and going, wow, we've got to do something. I think they realized it immediately because this didn't come together in a few days. This came together over the course of years. But this is a great response, I think, and they're going to guard their territory. I think it's good for the consumer. It's good for everybody, really, to have that kind of competition out there. And we're going to see even better things, I think, going forward from the new Wrangler.
Absolutely. I think the new interior, even just the looks alone, are enough to sell a lot of people on it. The old one was a little rough around the edges, but this one looks like looks nicer inside, much nicer. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, yeah. And then we have this all-electric truck from Ram with a targeted range of up to 500 miles. This is a really interesting take on this thing. Maybe different. It looks kind of different than I expected it to look, among other things. I expected it to be a little more out there. This is, I think, much more conventional than I expected. But what's your take on the new Ram 1500 REV?
I agree. If you look at the Ram concept truck that they showed, it looked like we were going to get a spaceship, with 3 rows of seating and all sorts of crazy styling. But this is a very standard looking pickup truck. They took sort of a similar approach that Ford did with the F-150 Lightning. And I think ultimately it'll sell more trucks, right? Because it looks like a normal vehicle. So the range of up to 500 miles, they say down the road, there's going to be an even longer range version. So who knows what that's going to look like. But the initial take here is that it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it is an impressive vehicle. I mean, it's not going to be with us very soon. I think Ford is going to have, and for that matter, Chevrolet General Motors is going to have more open range, at least a competition for Ram for another, X number of months before we see this thing. But when it comes to market, I think it's going to be a good one. A little disappointed in the fact that it's not as out there in terms of styling, but I think maybe that's what the market demands initially. And I think what we've seen in the concept truck is where they intend to go, and maybe they'll go there in the next iteration of this as it comes forward. So a lot going on at the New York Auto Show. Those are some of the highlights. And when we come back, we will have some road tests, 2 Toyota road tests, as it turns out, of the Toyota RAV4, one of the most popular vehicles in the United States, the adventure version. And I was driving the all-new, and dare I say it, sexy Toyota Prius. So we'll have that review coming up as well. So with Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad with you. Thanks so much for being with us, and please stay with us through the break. We'll have road tests for you next. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad, Mac with you for road test time. And it turns out to be an all-Toyota road test segment with 2 very important Toyota vehicles. One all new, one just super cool, an off-road version of one of the most popular vehicles in the United States. That's what you were driving, Chris. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Jack, I was driving the 2023 RAV4 Adventure. This is the gas-powered model. Toyota offers a plug-in hybrid and a hybrid version of the SUV. But I got to say, I'm a RAV4 veteran, I guess. I've owned a 2011 RAV4 and then the next generation, which is a 2013 before. I think there might be another generation in between that one and the one that we have now, but it's still just the same comfortable, sort of relaxed family hauling vehicle that it's always been. It's the same personality. Toyota slapped a more rugged face on it with the Adventure model, but it's still a RAV4 through and through. So, excuse me. So this one started in the mid-30s. Mine had a couple of options that took it up closer to 40, but you can buy a base RAV4 for under $30,000. Jack, I want to say, I think there's some pretty good value here. Have you driven the newest RAV4s?
I have. I like them a lot. And, I put my daughter in that, I think that generation of RAV4 that you didn't sample. And it has been an absolute champ for her. She loves it. She is a Toyota fan through and through, kind of following in the footsteps of one Chris Teague, I think, a big Toyota fan. I think once you get in a vehicle like that serves you so well, you just really respect that.
Yeah, if I weren't so crazy about buying cars that are breaking and need a lot of attention right now, I'd be in a Toyota, to be honest with you. But so This is a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine, 203 horsepower, 184 pound-feet of torque, and an 8-speed automatic transmission. The RAV4 comes standard with front-wheel drive. This Adventure has all-wheel drive, so you can be rugged and go, off-road with it if you want to, I guess. I think there's good power here for driving around town. I think there could be a little bit more. At times I think there was like 20 more horsepower and maybe around the same more pound-feet of torque, just to need a little more grunt. But overall, very smooth powertrain. Quick enough for in town. Like I said, nobody's going to sit here and want to win a drag race with their RAV4. So I think it's probably okay that it's not the most powerful thing on sale. Handles well, it rides well, it's very comfortable. There's plenty of room inside for kids. So, I think that if you're looking for something that's a little relaxing, that you don't have to worry about, handling, braking, all those things, and all-wheel drive makes it great in all sorts of weather. So really just a confidence-inspiring vehicle all around. But the inside is what I want to talk about here, especially the infotainment, because it was the change that Toyota implemented for 2023. It comes standard with an 8-inch screen. Mine had an optional 10.5-inch screen. Both of them run wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and they get Toyota's newest infotainment system, which, Jack, I have to tell you, has been my main sticking point with Toyota for years and years and years. I'm a huge fanboy, but I could not stand their infotainment interface, and this new one is better in almost every way. Have you had a chance to use it?
I have, and I know that Toyota is super proud of this. They went to the extent of, founding an arm of Toyota just to do this for the North American market, to please us with North American sensibilities, right? And they've done it. They knew they had a problem with their infotainment systems, and you were not alone in criticizing them. I did, all auto critics did, and more important to them, the public did, and they went out and fixed it.
They absolutely did, Jack. The new interface, it's a lot smoother. It's more responsive. The old one, I felt like I had to search a little bit too much to do what I needed to do, which can be distracting while you're driving, right? You don't want to be poking around at a touchscreen. But this one is a lot more simple. I think they reduced the layers of complexity quite a bit, so you don't end up looking, like I said, for 2 or 3 menus to get what you want to get done. Like I said, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto come with both screens. My car had the JBL upgraded stereo. Fantastic stereo for the car. The Adventure comes with synthetic leather. You can get cloth and lower trims. I think the top trim comes in leather, but the interior is plenty nice enough for the price. I think Toyota did enough to make it feel good for 35 grand. I think I would not be disappointed getting that interior. And then the other big thing here for families is that you get a full suite of safety equipment to go with everything. Toyota Safety Sense comes standard. So you get, what do you get? Adaptive cruise control, lane tracing assist, lane departure assist, road sign assistance, the whole deal included with every model. So I think it increases the value and the confidence, like I said earlier, that you get driving this thing.
Yeah, really, really excellent vehicle. And I can't endorse it enough. I think it's terrific. And the Adventure is kind of a cool looking version of that too. Well, I was driving the all-new Prius Prime, the Toyota Prius Prime, and I think through the years we've all come to understand what the Prius is and what it isn't, what it hasn't been anyway. And, it is, in a lot of ways, has been a one-trick pony doing a one-trick really well, and that was excellent fuel economy and low emissions. It has come to represent what a hybrid vehicle is, right? If you thought hybrid, you certainly thought of Prius. What you didn't think of was cool looking, sexy, fun. And that's exactly what the Prius Prime is. It's a great looking vehicle. The Toyota chief engineer and designers decided to totally transform it, give it a very good looking shape, while maintaining its kind of small dimensions and, the things we like about it, but giving it a much better look, I think, than any version before. And then they added a ton of horsepower to this thing. I mean, when you add 100 horsepower or close to 100 horsepower to a vehicle, it's transformative. And they've changed this from just being about fuel economy to about great fuel economy, because it still gets great fuel economy, but also about fun to drive and good looking. I mean, it's so good looking that people at the press conference were asking the Toyota execs, do you think you're going to lose your current customers because it looks so good? Which I thought was a little bit of an oddball question, but I didn't ask it. There you go. This is going to come in three levels, the Prius Prime. And the Prius Prime, I should mention right off the top, is their plug-in hybrid version of this. So it is the top level and the one with the most capabilities. It is the fastest. It has the most horsepower, and it gets the best fuel economy overall because it uses that plug-in power. It's available in three trim levels, and you will note that they are all S level: SE, XSE, and XSE Premium. So that shows you something right there, because those are the sporty Toyota nomenclature. The SE Premium is the most luxurious of the vehicles by a large margin, with an MSRP of close to $40,000, $39,170 plus a destination charge. These are going to be arriving in dealerships in May, so it's coming up. But even the SE, which is less expensive, not a ton less expensive, but somewhat less expensive, is very well equipped. It's much better equipped, I think, than the base model of a lot of vehicles out there. It has leather-trimmed heated steering wheel, rain-sensing wipers, electronic parking brake, 17-inch alloy wheels that look pretty cool. So, a lot to like about it. Nice interior. The XSE trim has 19-inch alloy wheels. Think of that on a Prius. And they're fairly sticky, too. I mean, they're not these low rolling resistance tires that we've come to know in these things. What's your overall take on, having looked at the Prius Prime and the new one?
I think it's about time, Jack. This thing has been on sale for a really long time, and it has always, somebody's going to get mad at me for saying this, it's not always been the prettiest vehicle on the road. So, I think looking at the crop of EVs that are coming out, if Toyota wanted any chance to keep selling this thing with the futuristic vehicles that are hitting the road, it had to do something, and I'm glad it took the direction it did, because, man, it's a gorgeous car.
Yeah. If you pop for this close to $40,000 XSE Premium, not only do you get a bunch of stuff with it, like heated and ventilated leatherette seats. I think of that in a Prius too. Heated and ventilated seats, power-operated rear hatch. These are things you wouldn't have seen in Priuses earlier, because a lot of that stuff adds weight, adds complexity, and they were trying to take that out to make sure that they got the fuel economy they wanted. They do get the fuel economy they want, but they still have these luxury features available. It has the Toyota multimedia system that you talked about in the RAV4, a very advanced version of that. So certainly checks that box. This is a vehicle that I think is transformative for Prius. I mean, we knew what Prius was. This is kind of a different Prius that does all that Prius did, but then does, significantly more. So I think, it's just going to expand the market for Prius pretty significantly. Final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely cannot wait to drive it. I think it looks fantastic, and we'll get one up here soon so I can get behind the wheel. But yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, good-looking vehicle, and I think a lot of people will, when they see it in the showroom, will go, "Hey, what's that?" And then they'll go, maybe that's something I should get into. Well, when we come back, we'll have a terrific guest for you. Jay Joseph is the Vice President of Sustainability and Business Development at American Honda. He's going to be talking about hydrogen power, both in static form and, of course, in vehicles. We had a wide-ranging discussion with him recently, so I think you'll enjoy that. So stay with us for that. And we'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. This is Jack Red with you, and we're in Torrance, California, on the campus of American Honda with a terrific guest. Jay Joseph is with us. Jay, I've known you for a long time. You are now Vice President of Case and something else within
Case
Honda.
And energy.
And
Case
energy.
Yeah.
Energy's very apropos, but so is Case, too. Explain your title to us, because I think the title kind of kicks this off for us.
Yeah, I'd like to demystify the acronym, because nobody really knows what that stands for. CASE is connected, autonomous, shared, and electrified. So connected, vehicle connectivity and over-the-air updates and that kind of thing. Autonomous speaks for itself. The technology that is oft touted and still a little bit down the road before it's
frequently not used, right?
Yeah, that's right. Or misunderstood. Shared means many things. Of course, it means shared vehicle services, things where people are able to dial up access to a vehicle that somebody else drives, but also car sharing, which we think will become important at some point, and we want to be prepared for that. Electrified speaks for itself. The energy portion is the renewable energy to power all of the case things that I just described, which we want to be part of that value stream in the future and be a solution provider for our customers as they convert to electrified vehicles.
Right. Sustainability being a big thing, right? For
That's
you,
right.
for American Honda, for
Yeah.
Honda going forward,
Yeah.
and for Honda as a company globally. Because what we're talking about here, and what brings me here today to speak with you, is the installation of a stationary fuel cell power source using fuel cells that previously were in Honda Clarity automobiles, right? Tell us a bit about what we saw today.
Yeah, that's right. And Jack, you mentioned sustainability, which is such a key theme for all of this, because sustainability has so many implications. It's, of course, our business has to be sustainable. We seek to be a company that society wants to exist, which means we have to exist as a healthy company. But of course, we're talking about resource circulation, recycling, and renewable energy when we talk about sustainability. But you mentioned the fuel cells that came from Honda Clarity fuel cell vehicles. That is such a great example of second life. We did the hard part first. We designed the fuel cell systems for mobile use. That's much harder than designing them for stationary use. When you've got stationary use, you know and can control
A lot of things,
temperatures and
yeah.
cooling and fuel supply and all the conditions that the thing is operating in. For a car, the whole point is that it's mobile. People can take it anywhere, and when you take that thing anywhere, it's got to be reliable and operate in all those conditions. So we did the hard part first by making it mobile, and now we're taking the second life of those fuel cell systems from Honda Clarity vehicles and using them as a stationary backup power source right here on our own campus.
Yeah, and not just to do it, but actually I think to prove a point, right, that this can be done, and that if there is a solution to be found for climate change, it's a larger solution than we're going to make a bunch of electric cars and you buy one and we all go home and congratulate ourselves and move on. It's not that. So tell us about that.
Happily, yeah, that's part of what's so exciting about this. Now, of course, batteries are a great interim solution, and battery technology continues to improve, and charging continues to improve. Charging times get faster, but they're still not quite at parity with putting gas through a big hole in the side of your car so it pumps through a small pipe and provides mobility for yourself and the occupants and contents of the vehicle. What's one of the exciting things about hydrogen is it's natural and it's abundant. It's in the air that we breathe. I think it's a little less than 0.5% of ambient air. So it's there. And the cycle of hydrogen is infinitely repeatable and ultimately could be done in a way with zero carbon impact. So we can take hydrogen, we can put it into a fuel cell, separate the H2 into two protons that want to connect with oxygen that we can pipe in from ambient air. In doing that, we're able to extract electricity and water. So the only
And that's
exhaust is
all.
water.
Yeah,
that's it.
all. Right.
Very clean water because there's nothing polluting it in there because we
Right.
have to keep the whole system clean. And electricity, we're able to extract electricity. So it's an infinitely repeatable cycle. Now, hydrogen itself, while it's abundant and it's in the air we breathe, access to high pressure stored hydrogen is nothing compared to access to electricity or gasoline today. So we've got to build a hydrogen economy. We've got to build a business out of this. We've got to generate demand for hydrogen while we generate supply of hydrogen.
Yeah, I mean, hydrogen is abundant, but it's typically in combination with something else, right?
That's right.
Hydrocarbons, it's in water, but it is not, you don't have free hydrogen, and you don't, drill a hole in the ground and get a bunch of hydrogen coming up the way you get natural gas. So talk about that a little bit. That's I think, one of the challenges here. Some energy has to be expended, I think, to derive hydrogen, number one.
That's
perhaps.
right.
Yeah.
The best way to get hydrogen, of course, there are many different ways to get hydrogen, but there are a couple that are really predominant for good reasons. The best way to get hydrogen is to separate hydrogen from water. So imagine this endless cycle of taking getting electricity from hydrogen and oxygen that makes water, and then using that water again someday to separate out the hydrogen that just keeps cycling through that. But yeah, getting hydrogen out of electrolysis to separate the hydrogen and oxygen from water requires energy, it requires a lot of electricity. Now, that can be done with renewable energy, that can be done with solar derived or wind derived or even hydroelectric derived electricity. One of the nice things about hydrogen is, compared to other forms of renewable energy, solar makes electricity when the sun shines, regardless of demand. And that might be at 10 o'clock in the morning when we're not using a lot of electricity.
Right.
But
it doesn't at midnight when there's no...
It doesn't when the sun sets and it might still be 90 degrees outside and you want to run your air conditioning.
Yeah.
And wind makes
Similarly,
energy.
the wind doesn't always blow, right?
When the wind blows, it makes
yeah.
electricity.
Yeah.
But imagine being able to use other things to store that energy. Of course, batteries are one option, and they're good for relatively short-term energy storage. But hydrogen could be another option for that. If there's low demand for electricity, but we've got all this electricity being produced. In California, 20% of our electricity is coming from solar already in 2023. But at 10 o'clock in the morning, when we're not using that electricity when it's being generated, we need to find some way to capture that energy so we can use it during peak demand. Hydrogen could be part of that solution.
Yeah. And from a transportation point of view, hydrogen represents a pretty good solution, maybe a better solution than a battery electric. Expand on that, because I really think that's true, and I think Honda's the kind of company that would figure that out.
Well,
right?
Fortunately, we're not doing this alone. There's some other companies that we really respect, competitors as OEMs that are also working on this. But yeah, it's an important part of the solution. There are things about batteries that remain a challenge. Batteries are, as I said, a very good interim solution and very good for many applications. And there's some really promising things coming in the near future with batteries and with vehicles that have these 80 kilowatt hour or larger batteries where we can put energy into them, put renewable energy into them during the day, like I said, when the sun's shining but we're not using electricity, and then take that out of the vehicle and manage some of that. That's exciting, and that's coming in the very near future. But it's not the same as hydrogen, which can be recharged really quickly. I'll say recharged, but can be
it's like
fueled.
filling up with gasoline in a lot of ways. I mean, they're very similar.
It doesn't take a lot longer to fill a hydrogen tank in a car than it takes to fill a gas tank in a car. And so that makes it very attractive for a lot of applications where you need the vehicle to operate many hours of the day, or it's a big vehicle. And it doesn't have any exhaust. So similar to battery, you can operate indoors. You can operate in all these other environments where you would never operate an internal combustion engine.
Yeah. Well, Honda has had commercial fuel cell vehicles on the road. Currently, you do not, the way I understand it. But you are about to again. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So we've sold the first generation Clarity in the middle of last decade and made that commercially available to customers in California where they have access to hydrogen fueling. The second gen Honda Clarity, of course, had 3 different powertrains. There was the hydrogen fuel cell, there was a battery electric with around a 90-mile range, and then a plug-in hybrid, which I'm actually driving and is a great solution for my commute. Mm-hmm. But that was the second generation. That ended a couple of years ago as we began working on our next generation fuel cell stack. So around a year from now, we'll introduce our next generation. It'll actually be a plug-in hybrid hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. So I think probably one of the most complex powertrains ever brought into the market. But that will be available about a year from now, powered by hydrogen, but with some range of PHEV.
Are you seeing enthusiasm for hydrogen-powered vehicles, for fuel cell vehicles? Because it strikes me, you know the chicken and egg problem here, right? I mean, you have to have enough vehicles on the road to justify the infrastructure to provide hydrogen, and which do you do first, and all that. So is there enthusiasm from enough companies to make that happen?
We believe there is. And of course, you mentioned the chicken and egg conundrum, and we find ourselves very much in that. Now, as Honda, we feel a responsibility for both sides of that equation. So we have partnerships with Shell. We have a relationship with First Element Fuels, which is rapidly expanding the hydrogen stations and access to hydrogen for customers, for retail customers, and we are supporting that. We continue to support that. At the same time, we have to generate demand for them, so those stations are a good investment for them. So we really have to work both sides of the equation, which is kind of a lot to ask of industry, but it's something we take seriously because, as you say, the progress doesn't go anywhere if we don't create demand and supply.
Mm-hmm. Oh, one last question before I let you go, and I'd love to talk longer, but we only have so much time. Regulations. I mean, certainly government regulations are critical in this area. I mean, they're encouraging some things, not encouraging others. Where do we stand vis-a-vis hydrogen and going forward with that?
Well, there are a couple different things that are having a really big effect on that. California has the low carbon fuel standard, which I guess the polite way to put it from our perspective is the program's working a little bit too well. So the credits are a great incentive, and they've been really beneficial for companies like First Element Fuels and others to spur investment and to motivate them and to create an economy that is sustainable for things like hydrogen and other renewable fuels. When I say it's worked a little bit too well, the investment caused a big biodiesel response, which is good for all of us. It's good for the air we breathe, and that's great. But it has driven down the value of those credits, which wasn't anticipated. And you know, investors like stable and predictable things. It worked a little bit too well. But you know, we're hoping that can be separated out a little bit, and that hydrogen can get the support that it needs to really get up on its feet and have a stable economy.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating stuff, and I wish you well on this, and you know, wish Honda well on this engineering going forward. It's so terrific.
Thank you, Jack. Absolute pleasure.
Jay Joseph, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Look forward to seeing you again soon.
And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad with you. Thanks so much for being with us. We do appreciate it. This is the segment of the show in which we answer listener questions. And we're happy to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you with your listener question. You can send it to editor@drivingtoday.com, editor@drivingtoday.com, and we'll get your question on a future show. Not only get your question there, we'll answer it. I mean, that will help maybe more than just having the question out there. But let's take some questions right now, Chris. Here's a good one from Bill in Kansas City, Missouri. He says, I'm looking at electric-powered pickup trucks. What do you think is the best one? And a further question, am I doing the right thing? Maybe you answer either of those in whichever order you want to, Chris.
I think I'll start with the easier one. I think in terms of which one is best, right now you only have two choices, and they're both going to be really hard to get. I think you have the Rivian R1T, which is the sort of futuristic, smaller pickup truck, still offers a lot of off-road capability, still has great towing, and is very expensive, but it has a long wait list. And then you have the Ford F-150 Lightning, which is like a normal pickup truck. It looks just like an F-150. It can be had in several trims and a lot of luxury items that come with it, but it also is going to be a long wait. Ford has had a lot of delays and has had trouble keeping pace with the demand. So I think both of those are going to take a little while. If you're willing to wait for those, you could wait a little longer and get the Chevy Silverado EV or the GMC Sierra EV or even the Ram REV that we talked about earlier in the show. But either way, you're going to be waiting a while. So I think that you'll have your pick, but it probably won't be for another year or so before you're able to get there. In terms of whether you should do that or not, Jack, what do you think?
I really think it depends on how Bill is going to use his truck, right? I mean, if you're going to use it as so many people use it, with both personal use and some business use, or, you know, maybe he's a tradesman, maybe he, you know, works construction or something like that. It kind of depends on the duty cycle, you know, how you're going to use it. Can you home charge? What is your access to charging? What do you want out of the vehicle? That has a big, and in Kansas City, Missouri, you're going to run into cold weather too, which is something you have to deal with and can, you know, drastically knock down your range. So there's a lot of questions, I think, still to be answered first asked and then answered about an electric pickup truck as just kind of an everyday pickup truck replacement.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. There's an electrician here in town that has a fleet of electric F-150 Lightnings, and so the only way they're able to do it is that they also installed a fleet of chargers at their garage, and they don't do any towing or long haul driving on the highway. So, like you said, it does depend.
I mean, I'm looking at a lot of Rivian trucks here in Southern California. I see a lot of them on the road. I have never seen one that looked as if it was doing any kind of commercial work at all or carrying even any kind of load. I mean, they're basically passenger cars with a pickup truck bed that rides empty behind them. At least that's what I've seen. So I think that can be a working pickup truck, but I don't think it's being used as one right now.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, here's another question, and maybe apropos to a vehicle you had on the show, too. Fiona from Henderson, Nevada asks this, or says this: I'm amazed at how expensive the Honda CR-V and Toyota RAV4 are. I'm sure she's talking about new versions of those vehicles. I'd like to buy a vehicle like that. Do you have any thoughts for me that could help?
I have two, and I think they're pretty closely, well, I know they're pretty closely related to each other. The first is the Nissan Rogue, and the other is the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport. I think both of them I think they're both cheaper than the RAV4 and the CR-V. I'd have to confirm, but I think they both have good value. You can get pretty high up in the trim level before you start bumping into the top end of the RAV4 lineup. And they're nicer than they used to be. I mean, people who think that they're low budget brands, that's not the case for Mitsubishi anymore. In fact, I was looking this morning, it's actually hard to buy a cheap Mitsubishi. So they're very nice, and they may be a little cheaper. So I think those two would be my choice, Jack. What do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely look at those vehicles. I think there's a lot to like about them. I mean, another potential alternative is the Mazda CX-5. I mean, that's a vehicle we like a lot. It is typically, though, premium priced and, kind of at the other end of the scale in terms of equipment levels. So it might be maybe more available or, in somewhat less demand. So maybe you could drive a better deal on it. I'm not certain about that now. That's something to look at. I would also suggest maybe stepping down a size. I mean, if you were looking to buy a previous edition Honda CR-V, you might look at the current edition Honda HR-V, the next size down. It's basically the same size as the CR-V was a generation or two ago, has all the utility of that vehicle. I think that's a way to go. And, looking at those slightly smaller vehicles that could serve you just as well, especially if you're commuting in that thing, you're only putting at most 4 people in it, 2 adults and maybe 2 children in the back seat. I think you'd be well suited with, what in the industry calls a subcompact SUV rather than the compact SUV that the CR-V and RAV4 are. And I think because of their interior space, they're approaching mid-size anyway. I mean, from an EPA point of view. So it all depends on how you look at it. I mean, one way a lot of car companies make a vehicle better is by making it a little bigger. So we've seen size creep through the years, and it might be wise for Fiona to look at a smaller and maybe thus less expensive vehicle.
I actually agree with that, and I didn't think of it before, but it does make sense. Automakers have done a good job with the subcompact size. It used to be you couldn't carry 4 people and a lot of gear, and now you're getting pretty close to being able to do both. So I think there's a lot of compelling choices in the smaller size, and they are cheaper, like you said.
Yeah, so look at those. In fact, maybe this next question identifies one of those. This is from Tommy in Tacoma, Washington. I don't know whether Tommy is a man or a woman. It's hard to tell from an email, but I guess the answer is the same no matter what the gender of the questioner is, right? What do you think of the Toyota Corolla Cross? I haven't heard much about it, but is it something I should look at? And I as big a Toyota fan as you are, Chris, I don't know that you've driven the Toyota Corolla Cross, but you probably know something about it, right?
I do. I have not driven it, and it is based on the new Corolla, which I think is a fantastic vehicle on its own. So you get any of that dynamic quality out of it. You get any of the interior comfort. I think you're going to be a happy buyer. And from what I know about the pricing, it's also not outrageously priced. So it is pretty fair in that spectrum, Jack. And since you have driven it, though, what do you think?
Well, I think it's one heck of a value, actually. And I was talking to the Toyota people about it very recently because I got the chance to drive the hybrid version of the Toyota Corolla Cross, recently introduced. I mean, I don't think it's in showrooms yet. I don't think it'll be in showrooms until later this year, but certainly a variant to look at. But even the non-hybrid, or I would say maybe especially the non-hybrid, is an excellent value. I think it starts in the low 20s. This is a compact, I guess you would call it a subcompact, kind of a Honda HR-V competitor. And they sold 100,000 of them in the first year. I mean, that's an incredible success. They're probably going to sell another 15,000 of the hybrids alone just this year. So this has been a very successful launch for Toyota. Of course, the Corolla itself is one of the most popular, if not the most popular vehicles in the world. So it's based on something that is very high value and is very well respected. This is a vehicle that's absolutely should be checked out, I think. So
I agree.
Take a look at that. And Chris, what's going on at your test driver?
I have extended the giveaway for the 2 racing school passes. We're going to run it through the end of April now. I think with tax time, at least my own tax time has been very crazy. So I think it could be hard for other people to focus on things. But if you go to yourtestdriver.com, you can check out the article there. We're giving away a 1-day Skip Barber Racing School Pass or a 1-day Team O'Neill Rally School Pass. Team O'Neill's here in New Hampshire. They are great guys. If you like to see rally cars, that's a place to be. Head to yourtestdriver.com. I've had the article pinned to the top of the site. All the directions are right there. Get started. It's easy and free to enter. So no risk involved at all. Just go get started.
You should absolutely enter that. What great prizes. I envy anybody who wins that. That should be absolutely terrific. So, look for that. Please check out my newest book, which is called Dance in the Dark. It's a crime thriller inspired by true crime. It's available on Amazon as both a Kindle ebook edition and, of course, as a paperback. I'm rereading it right now, and I'm having a lot of fun discovering what I wrote, now a year or so ago or longer. So I think you'll enjoy it. Not a lot of car in it, but a lot of crime in it. So some pretty cool stuff. And our thanks to you for listening to America on the Road. We do appreciate that. And I think, Chris, we'd also like to thank our friends at SportsMap Radio, wouldn't we?
Yeah, if you like what you heard here, head to the SportsMap Radio website at sportsmapradio.com. There you can find our podcast and radio show recorded, as well as the entire roster of other shows that they have. A lot of them are great. There are a couple other automotive shows that air later in the day than we do. However, Jack, I really enjoyed it recording with you yet again, and thanks everybody for listening. I hope we see you next time. You want to sign us off?
Absolutely. Join us again next time right here for America on the Road.